Hello and welcome to Redaction Report. Today on the show, we've got a guest with us. He is Alex Mays. He is the founder and leader of the Breakthrough Party. Now, the Breakthrough Party is a recently formed democratic socialist party here in the UK. They are people who've been kind of disillusioned with the direction that the Labour Party's taken under its new leadership under Keir Starmer. So far they've contested one by-election, which was in Cheshire and Amersham. We'll be talking about that in a bit, I'm sure. And they've also recently gained their first councillor through a defection from the Labour Party. I'll start by throwing it over to you, Alex. How did the Breakthrough Party come about? Where did it all start?
So I guess the idea has sort of been in my head probably since like the last summer. I was a Labour Party member during the Corbyn years, and obviously, like I think everyone on the left in 2017 was like we were so close to getting kind of what we wanted to see in this society, and then obviously a couple of years later, I think Brexit dominated the general election, and it was just lots of things conspired against the left really to have any chance of getting any power in this country. And in 2019, we obviously saw a general election defeat, and I think there was a lot, millions of people across the country were pretty devastated by that, myself included. And in the sort of like ashes of that defeat, I guess there was, obviously Jeremy Corbyn resigned as leader. And there was like a bit of a vacuum, I guess, in Labour of like what was next for Labour. And obviously, in the leadership election that followed, I voted myself for Rebecca Long-Bailey and Richard Bergen, and then obviously Keir Starmer got in on the 10 pledges that he made at the beginning, which seemed okay on the whole. Like they were pretty just like watered down versions of what had come before. But nothing, as time went on, I think we could clearly see that he wasn't going to be sticking by these pledges. A lot of the moves that were done by him and the rest of the Labour Party leadership was quite disappointing. Like, I think there was a lot of people already like very like angry and disillusioned with politics in this country. And then to see the Labour Party kind of abandon what it'd done over the last 3-4 years, the movement it had built, and seeing that sort of crashing around them was quite hard to see. So I decided to resign my membership in the summer of last year. And from then, really, it was a bit of soul searching for me. Like I looked around, trying to see like what, Labour had kind of abandoned the left, really. Like they'd shifted further right to sort of counteract the Tories who'd lurched further to the right. And there was just it just seemed like there was a massive political vacuum on the left. Like when I was looking around, there was no party that was really speaking for me. For young people, I don't think there was anyone really doing that. So off the back of that, I just, I started talking to a few friends about it. I was like, well, should I just try and start a political party? It was almost at first, it was a bit like, can I really try and do this? Like, have I got any right to try and even do this? Because I think, again, like a lot of people, when they look at the task of doing something like this, politics has become, over the years especially, I think, really difficult to enter into if you're not wealthy or have the connections or any existing connections or anything like that. So, the more I started talking to people about it, I was like, why don't I give it a go? Like people were liking the ideas and like what we were trying to do. And then that sort of led to me forming the party in January this year.
Obviously, a lot of people have been disillusioned with the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. But of course, a lot of people are going to turn around to you and say, under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour endured its worst election defeat since 1935 on the most explicitly left-wing platform it's had since 2017, of course, but since 1983 before that. And of course, that was a pretty devastating result too. A lot of people are going to turn around to you and say, is a left-wing platform like that actually electable? What would you say to that?
So, like what we've seen time and time again in surveys carried out since 2019 election and before that was that these policies are popular with the general public. Like a lot of the sort of when we talk about Green New Deal, when we talk about renationalising public services, anything like this is deemed quite popular with the British public. So I think the idea that a progressive left-wing policy platform isn't popular is like, I think it's quite a bit of a, it's sort of thrown about, but it's not, it's got no grounding in practice really. But then also in terms of the 2019 election is mentioned a lot, and it's weird. The 2017 election is sort of this ghost that didn't exist. Like I think people forget the 2017 result and like how much was gained there and how much ground was gained and how close we were to a truly socialist government. I definitely don't think that like progressive ideas and policies are unpopular in this country. Far from it. I think people are crying out for these kind of changes in society, and I think we've seen it through I think the pandemic has highlighted it massively, like the inequality in our country. But then also, like when we think about bigger challenges like climate change, like we've seen that even more recently, that the sort of solutions we need to these problems need to be quite radical. Like we can't tinker around the edges anymore, like the establishment parties want to continue doing. We need to offer radical solutions, and I think our party wants to do that, and I think there are other emerging parties that also want to do that and challenge the two-party system.
Yes, you mentioned the 2017 election there as well, of course, which of course Labour made gains in, but still didn't win. And then, of course, the devastating result of 2019 came along. Obviously, Labour still didn't win in 2017, but you hold that up as a success. What do you think went right there, and what do you think went wrong in 2019?
So I think that the main thing that went right in 2017 was that the Labour Party at the time managed to move the conversation away from Brexit, which had dominated, the headlines for like the last 2 or 3 years, since it was announced that there was going to be a referendum. So I think like that's what the Labour Party at that time, they managed to present a vision that to the country that was something that everyone, like a lot of people, get on board with, and they managed to sort of toe the line on Brexit. I think the issue that came about in 2019 was the indecisiveness about where they stood on Brexit. I think that was a massive red flag for a lot of people, and Brexit was a massive dividing line in British politics as well at the time, especially. It's weird since that election, it's kind of not been mentioned anywhere near as much, and it's kind of almost, it's obviously there's still issues in the background off the back of the fallout of Brexit, but it's nowhere near mentioned or talked about as much by a lot of people now. And I think in 2019, Labour really struggled to grasp with that, like the indecisiveness there, and then the eventual backing of the people's vote, I think was a massive downfall for them.
Let's talk about Keir Starmer then, because of course, as you mentioned earlier, Keir Starmer stood on 10 pledges, which largely preserved the sort of the economically radical elements of the 2019 manifesto, even if they may have been a little watered down. Of course, Keir Starmer has now led the Labour Party through some pretty shocking election results. He's also widely been perceived as moving Labour more to the centre, perhaps more so than his initial election pledges would suggest. What do you think is going wrong for him?
Quite a lot, to be honest. Like I think for me, but the main issue I think for me is like the lack of standing for anything. Like there's no real. Only recently have there been some sort of policy announcements. He's been in leader of the opposition now for 18 months, and not many people know what he stands for. And I think that's the fundamental issue here, is that, and I think this is the fundamental issue of a lot of centrist politics, is that there's actually no real vision of like what it is, like what is centrism, what policies and what changes are you going to make. And like most of the time it's not many changes, like it's very much tinkering with the edges of what already exists. And I think that's the fundamental issue with Starmer. He's not been, he's kind of the idea of what people think a good politician should be. He wears a suit, he's got a good haircut, and that's kind of it. Like there's nothing beyond that. And like people talk a lot about his background as a human rights lawyer, like forensic and whatever else, but like at the end of the day, that isn't going to galvanise people. That isn't going to get people excited. That isn't going to, you know, they're not offering anything inspiring at the moment, Labour. And I think that's the issue. And like what they're also doing is kind of abandoning all these voters that voted for them in 2017 and 2019. For me, if they continue on this trajectory, they will lose dozens of seats in the next general election. I predicted probably around 60. I think they will lose a lot of seats. And I think if they don't change course, they will. Like, there's just no way that they will. There's 100% no chance that they will gain any seats in the next election if they continue down this path.
So let's bring that on to the Breakthrough Party then, and where you're standing. One, of course, and at Redaction, we've covered a couple of Breakthrough Party news stories already. And there's one comment we keep on getting from our readers is saying, aren't you just splitting the vote with Labour? What's your response to that?
This gets said a lot about splitting the vote. And for me, it's just, it's very frustrating because what vote is there to split? Like when I talk about like Breakthrough being a left-wing party, I don't think we're splitting a left-wing vote because we are the left-wing vote. Like Labour are no longer left-wing. They're basically in the, you know, in the same sort of category as the Lib Dems. Like, to be honest, the way they go, and they might as well team up and be one party. You know, like, I think that's where we're at with Labour. So I don't think, you know, we can talk about splitting the vote all we want, but like, at the end of the day, Labour aren't offering anything. They might as well, like, sorry, a lot of, you know, like a lot of MPs, like a lot of the Labour MPs right now, probably like 70 to 80% of them are right-wing Labour MPs. They're not even like fit to be in the Labour Party, in my opinion. They're not democratic socialists. So like if we put up a candidate against one of them, would I say it would be splitting the left vote or splitting the vote? No, because they might as well not be a Labour MP. They might as well not be a left-wing candidate because they're just not now, unfortunately. Like, I would love it if like the second biggest party in the country was left-wing, but ultimately it's not. So we need to try and be that option, you know, whether that's Breakthrough, whether there's other left-wing parties that will emerge during this period. Like, there needs to be a left-wing option. And at the moment, that doesn't exist in British politics.
Will you stand against the Northern Independence Party?
So with the Northern Independence Party and other left-wing parties that are emerging, like initial conversations are being had. There's nothing official as such yet, but like these conversations are happening. I think it's really important that there is some sort of, whether it's a coalition or some sort of electoral pact or something in place ahead of the next general election, especially, or even in the local elections next year and in 2023. I think that has to happen. I think there has to be cooperation on the left. Like, ever since I've started the party, I've been really keen on some sort of formal or informal alliance with other left-wing and like-minded groups. So that's something that we're really keen on as a party, and I'm keen to pursue as well. And like, you know, I think until we get to elections, like obviously once we have something more official, we can obviously talk about it. But at the moment, we're having those conversations, and we're aware of the challenges we're aware of the issues that have occurred in the past, where we've had 3 or 4 left-wing parties standing in one seat, and we can't allow that to happen again. We can't. There has to be a united front on the left, and hopefully we can do that in the future.
So the Breakthrough Party, of course, you had your very first election was in the recent by-election in Chesham and Amersham. Now, this is usually a Tory safe seat, but it actually went to the Liberal Democrats this time round. There was a massive swing. Liberal Democrats very largely campaigning on local issues such as planning reform and high-speed rail. You stood a candidate, a local candidate, Carla Gregory. I interviewed her before at the time of the by-election. You scored just under 200 votes. So you didn't win your deposit back this time, but of course, you didn't come last. You beat the Rejoin EU party, who we also interviewed. So you have that to hold up. But of course, Labour did exceptionally badly in this by-election. When you were out campaigning there, I don't know if you were there yourself.
Yeah.
That how was the reception there? Were you seen as sort of that alternative to Labour? Is that how you presented yourselves?
Yeah, we did, because like we knew that it would be really a toss up between Lib Dems and Tories. I'll be totally honest with you. I never saw the Lib Dems winning that constituency. Like, it was a total surprise for me that they managed. Like, I think I underestimated the hate that there was from, and the betrayal, I think, from a lot of like former Tory voters who decided to go Lib Dem for the first time. And their presence in that constituency was insane. Like, they were just everywhere. And like, when we were at the count, pretty early on, we were like, God, like, I think they've got this. Like, it was really quite apparent quite early on. And then looking in, as you said, looking in the Labour tray or the Labour trays and seeing like nothing coming in, it was crazy. Like, we were sat next to the Labour team at the Cheshire Amersham by-election results, and we were just like, you could tell like the mood was really poor there. But yeah, we're on the doorsteps. We were absolutely selling ourselves as the alternative. Like, Labour traditionally haven't done particularly well in Cheshire Amersham. They've once come second, and that was in 2017 under Jeremy Corbyn. So there was clearly, like, I think Cheshire Amersham, even though they'd been Tory for nearly 50 years, I think it was, since the constituency was found, was that, the Tories had always won there. But I think Brexit was a massive issue in Cheshire Amersham as well. Like, it was a Remain seat, and then obviously there were a lot of Tory voters there who were more Remain rather than Leave, and I think that probably attracted them to the Lib Dems as well. And as you say, those local issues. So we had an opportunity to present ourselves as a radical option to these two main parties. The Green Party came third there. They really heavily lent on HS2, which obviously they ended up coming third quite comfortably in the end. And I think that was a big issue that was talked about a lot. We were trying to focus more on poverty, on jobs, on housing, and on other issues as well, just inequality in general, and addressing these issues. And we did obviously have a stance on HS2 as well. But ultimately the issues around HS2 and planning reform won the day, and I think people were just absolutely sick to death of having the Tories there and wanted anything else. I think the challenge will now be for the Lib Dems there. Can they keep hold of that seat in the next general election? Because by-elections are Lib Dems' bread and butter, like they have been previously. Will they actually be able to hold out onto this seat for longer than 2-3 years? And I think that would be the interesting thing.
It is going to be an interesting one, actually, because there's been a lot of talk about the blue wall collapsing in the same way as the red wall. That image of Ed Davey knocking down the blue wall is peak thick of it in real life.
It was just such a small hammer as well. It was just so cringe. Like, there's such a.
I'm trying to picture in my head with him with a massive sledgehammer now, and I think in a weird way that might have been even more embarrassing. But
it was just crazy. Like, I think they do, like, genuinely, I think they will have a lot of chance in these sort of seats to knock the Tories out. But I think the Tories will, continue to try and batter Labour in other constituencies. So even if the Tories did lose a few seats down south, I think they might gain others elsewhere. The red wall is talked about a lot, but the red wall is still pretty red, even though, like, a few bricks have been taken out, as it were.
Well, that's it. The Tories are facing the problem of how to win in both the north and the south. If you're promising planning reform to encourage more development in the north, that's going to piss off the home counties. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Of course, Dominic Raab nearly lost his seat at the last election, which is in.
I think he will lose it. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he lost it.
I believe that's Esher and Walton is his constituency in Surrey.
Yeah, so, that's it. I think it's one of those that could go.
Cheryl Gillen won Cheshire Amersham in 2019 more comfortably than Dominic Raab won Esher and Walton. So,
well, this is it. I think that's the really interesting thing about the political landscape right now, is that I don't think any seat is safe, genuinely. I think if the right party came at the right time with the right vision and the right policy platform, I think there's a lot of seats that could easily turn. Like, I think so much could happen in the next general election. It could. Like, the political landscape in this country could change forever, genuinely. I know that sounds a bit like over the top, but it genuinely could, because it's such a turbulent time in British politics. Like, there's so much happening. Like, it feels like, I don't know, like, maybe this is again just from, you're on Twitter a lot and you see what's going on, but like it just feels constant at the moment. Like, with what's every week, every day, there's a new outrageous story, you go, oh my God, I cannot believe this is real. I can't believe this isn't the thick of it. But no, this is real life. And it is every day. It is every day. So I think, yeah, I think there's, for like a new party like us, I think there is a real chance for us to make an impact.
To break through.
To break through. I was trying to avoid using the word the phrase breakthrough, but like, yeah, no, it's true. That's why we call, that's why we called it ultimately. Like, we do want to break through the political system we're currently in, and I think we have a real good chance of doing that.
When I told somebody I was going to be interviewing the Breakthrough Party, one question they asked me to ask you was, do you change your name if you do make a breakthrough?
I wouldn't want to. No, I think the thing is, like, we can make, we've made, like, we'll talk about it in a minute, I'm sure, but like, we made our first breakthrough with getting our first councillor. But I think we will continue making breakthroughs over time. Like, we will, like, there'll, hopefully there'll be like more councillors to come. Like, I think that could quite easily happen over these, whether that's through more defections or whether through hopefully like local election wins in the future. But then also getting our first MP, or getting a first few MPs. Like, there's always going to be more and more ways to break through, as it were. I think the interesting thing is, as well, is like, how do we gauge success as a party? So a lot of people have asked me that as well. Is like, well, what do you see as success? And obviously, electoral success is one thing, but it's changing the conversations that happen in British politics at the moment. It's moved so far to the right that left-wing ideas aren't really anywhere near as mainstream as they should be. And I think what our job is as a left-wing party is almost to be like the left UKIP, really, and kind of push things further to the left and get parties adopting our ideas and our vision for this country. And that will also be a success in itself.
And what are those policies and ideas?
Yeah, so, we've got, at the moment, we've got 10 core policies that our members voted on. So stuff from like a £15 minimum wage for all, collaborating across borders to bring in a Green New Deal. It's like a global Green New Deal. Bring in utilities, transport, and the like back into public service. Renationalising the NHS and bringing in social care service into that as well. I could keep going on, but like, basically, like, and ending like fire and rehire, and like banning 0 hours contracts. Lots of like, just really like, and building more social housing. Like, these are really, like, when you think about it, really common sense ideas that will address a lot of the issues our society faces. But because of how far things have moved to the right, as I said before, that these are seen as really, really radical. But these are things that will genuinely help solve a lot of the issues that our society faces right now. And I think that's what we need. We need to be really open with people and say, like, look, like, we need to do this. Like, we can't, when I saw the other day that Labour were pushing for a £10 minimum wage, is that really enough in the grand, like, if you're living in London, is £10 an hour enough? No, absolutely not. And like, even like living nearly anywhere, it's not like you're going to be able to put away and save for a holiday, or save to like buy a house or anything, like to get a deposit for a house. You just can't. So we need to make sure everyone doesn't only like survive in society, but actually thrives. And I think like a lot of the policies that we're presenting, I think, will allow people to thrive.
As you mentioned earlier, you've now got a councillor. How did that happen?
Yeah, so we actually, like, Sam dropped us a message and just basically said, like, I'm absolutely, like, I'm at the end of my tether with the Labour Party. I've been looking for alternatives for a little while now, and from what I saw, like, Breakthrough offers something which really matches what I'm about, and obviously offering something, a more radical vision for this country. So I had some conversations with Sam. From talking to her, I could tell that she really got what we were about, and like, she definitely aligned with our values, our beliefs. And from there on in, it was very much just a matter of just figuring out how it works officially before we were able to launch it. It's been over the course of a couple of weeks, and we were able to announce that on Monday. From speaking to her already, and like, speaking to a lot of the people in her constituency, like, she's a very well liked person, and like, obviously has done a hell of a lot for her community already since she was elected in 2019. And these are the kind of people that we want up and down the country representing Breakthrough, people that are doing real good in their community and not just popping up every April, May time in elections to ask for people's votes. We want them to be doing stuff. You know, Sam has like campaigned for free school meals, Black Lives Matter, and you know she's currently chairing the community development group in Keighley. So I think like for me, it's like we want more people like Sam to be part of the party. There are other councillors that we are potentially talking to at the moment who might also defect to the party. And we want to have people like that across the country, whether they defect or whether we get them elected. But like we're really excited to have Sam, and as I said before, it's like our first real electoral breakthrough, you could probably argue. But like we're hopefully going to have plenty more over the coming weeks and months.
Have you been in touch with Jeremy then, given that he's not got the party whip?
Well, that's a good question. I think with Jeremy, I think I'm interested to see what happens over these next few weeks and months, because he's obviously, I don't know what hope he has in being restored the whip in the Labour Party.
I highly doubt it.
I highly doubt it will happen. So I do wonder what is next for him. The Peace and Justice Project has got quite a big following. Could he turn that into a party? That's what a lot of people are asking for. But we've chatted to the Peace and Justice Project, like they're part of that group of parties and movements we're speaking to, and I'm interested to see where they go. Like I don't know. Like I think if Jeremy Corbyn saw what we're doing, I think he'd be supportive of it. That we're offering something. I think in the ashes of what came of his tenure of the Labour Party, I think there is genuine like hope and optimism for the left. I think we're starting to see sort of shoots growing now across the country, which I don't think were there in the aftermath of 2019. I think there was a lot of pessimism and negativity, and I was one of them. I was one of them. Like I was devastated after that result, and I think a lot of people are still mourning even to this day. But there is hope out there, and there are new parties like ourselves coming through that I think can offer something different and offer something new to people. And we can offer the kind of change that this country really needs right now, away from the Tories and from the Labour Party.
Alex Mays, leader of the Breakthrough Party, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, James.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, click the bell, and follow us on social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on the full works. Consider dropping us a quid or two on Patreon as well. That would be greatly appreciated. But until then, goodbye and thanks for tuning in.